We're going to look at it. So foul there on Indiana, on Hull there. But then that is a technical.
That is a technical. Dead ball, contact technical.
It's a little surprising to see so many of these happen in one game because...
Oh, and I don't like the way Lexie Hull...
Minnesota fans expected a routine matchup, but for the Indiana Fever, the night began under a cloud of adversity. The roster was already stretched thin, with 5 core players: Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, Chloe Bby, Sydney Carlson, and Ari McDonald, all sidelined by injuries. The absence of so many familiar faces left Indiana scrambling for answers. Still, in a show of sheer determination, Odyssey Sims, nursing an injury of her own, stepped onto the hardwood, refusing to let her team go down without a fight. But the real heartbreak came not from the Fever's lack of depth, it came from the officials. In a critical sequence, Lexie Hull absorbed a sharp elbow to the face from Kayla McBride. Rather than penalizing McBride for the contact, the whistle inexplicably went against Hull. The call sent shockwaves through the arena and left Caitlin Clark visibly furious on the sidelines. How could such a clear foul be twisted against the Fever? Already crippled by injuries, the team now finds themselves battling more than just their opponents. It's as if the officiating itself is stacking the odds against Indiana's playoff hopes, turning every game into a steeper climb. So the question lingers: are these just unfortunate mistakes by the referees, or is something more deliberate at play? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this controversy is only heating up.
Every time a game happens in the WNBA, somebody's getting abused, somebody getting beaten, somebody is getting hurt, man. Somebody is getting hurt every game in the WNBA, and they just fail to realize this, fail to have any protocols on stopping the nonsense, man. My goodness.
Picture stepping into an arena to face one of the most dominant teams in the league, only to realize that more than half your squad is unavailable. That wasn't a worst-case scenario. That was the harsh reality for Indiana. Their star guard Caitlin Clark has been sidelined for over a month with a nagging groin injury. Sophie Cunningham's season came to an abrupt end after tearing her MCL. Chloe Bby continues to battle a lingering knee issue. Sydney Carlson is gone for the year with a torn ACL, and Ari McDonald's season was cut short by a severe right foot injury. That's 5 key players completely stripped from the rotation. To make matters worse, Odyssey Sims, brought in on a hardship contract to fill in as essentially the backup to the backup to the backup for Clark, wasn't anywhere near healthy. Even so, she laced up, limped out, and forced herself into the game simply because her team had no one else to turn to. Reading through that laundry list of absences is enough to make you feel drained. Now imagine having to compete at the highest level of professional basketball under those conditions, where every possession feels like climbing a mountain with no summit in sight.
The Indiana Fever's injury bug is getting into spooky territory. It seems like there's a new player every single day that's getting injured. Right now they have Caitlin Clark out, not sure if she will be returning this season. Sid Colson out with a season-ending ACL tear. Ari McDonald out with a season-ending fracture in her foot. Sophie Cunningham out with a season-ending MCL tear. And then just today, before the game, they announced that Chloe Bby would be out with a knee injury, and basically they just said it's soreness and they're just playing it safe.
This wave of injuries didn't just rob Indiana of its stars, it shattered the very foundation of their rotations. Overnight, their depth at both the guard and wing positions disappeared, forcing players like Lexie Hull and Kelsey Mitchell to shoulder an almost impossible responsibility. Just 2 nights earlier, again against Minnesota, Hull was thrown into uncharted territory. She logged a career-high 37 minutes on the floor and delivered 23 points. Not because the coaching staff wanted to showcase her talent, but because there was simply no other option. That wasn't a bonus performance, it was survival basketball. When every player is being asked to give more than they ever have before, each possession feels like scaling a mountain with no safety net. To be clear, Hull has the ability to put up big numbers on any given night. Her skill isn't the question. But asking her, and every other starter, to consistently play extended minutes without the relief of a reliable bench is an exhausting demand. This isn't just a test of skill anymore. It's a test of endurance, willpower, and resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity.
Lexie, did you come into tonight kind of expecting to play darn near the whole game just with the injury situation and the personnel available?
Damn, you played 37 minutes.
I mean, you played a lot too, Kels. When did you play? 35. I mean, yeah, we're down people, so gotta suck it up, play a little tired a few minutes, and take in those timeouts as best we can. But yeah, I mean, we're down people, so everyone's got to do a little more.
Indiana's solutions haven't been elegant. They've been desperate. With half the roster unavailable, the Fever have been forced to stitch together a lineup through hardship contracts, pulling in players at a moment's notice just to survive. Some barely had time to unpack their bags before being thrown straight into the rotation. Odyssey Sims, already dealing with her own nagging injuries, was suddenly asked to be the steady hand guiding a shaky squad. Aerial Powers was another late arrival, thrust into heavy minutes without the luxury of building rhythm or developing chemistry with her teammates. Each of these emergency additions was handed responsibilities far greater than what they had time to prepare for, and yet they had no choice but to step directly into the fire. The result is a group of players who are learning one another's tendencies on the fly, all while opposing teams exploit every crack in their cohesion. It's nearly impossible to overstate how brutal that is for a professional roster, trying to build chemistry in real time under the bright lights, while every mistake becomes an open door for the opposition.
We've had 3 players in the last I don't know how many days, and 2 of those players are point guards, so not really. But you know, at the same time, our ability to make plays out of what we have, right? I think a lot of our spacing allows players to do what they do best, creates opportunities for them to be successful, and then it's just making the right reads and finding the right pass, you know, on time, on target. And some of that is with experience with your teammates, and some of that is instinct. And so we are trying to do as much as we can to put players in position to use those instincts.
Head coach Stephanie White didn't sugarcoat the reality. She admitted the level of physicality Indiana faced was far beyond what this shorthanded roster could withstand. And honestly, calling it different might even be too polite. Every trip to the basket, every defensive stand demanded maximum energy from a group with depth as thin as paper. Despite the impossible circumstances, Kelsey Mitchell rose to the occasion and did everything in her power to keep the Fever within striking distance. Mitchell poured in 26 points, weaving through traps, absorbing contact, and still finding ways to score against relentless defensive pressure. There were stretches where it felt like she was carrying the entire team on her back, willing them to stay alive. That's the kind of performance you expect from a superstar, the kind that demands respect. But basketball isn't a one-woman game. When the rest of your offense is pieced together by players signed mid-season simply to patch holes left by injuries, there's only so much one player, no matter how brilliant, can do. The weight becomes unbearable, and even greatness has its limits.
At this rate, the Fever are going to end the season with a completely different team than what they started the season with. And even the players that they're bringing in on hardship or that they're signing midway through the season, they're now going down with injuries. The season from hell would be an understatement on this team right now.
This defeat had nothing to do with heart or effort. It was about sheer survival. The Fever fought with grit and determination, battling through a nightmare scenario where every possession felt like a war of attrition. Outmanned, undermanned, and out of options, they still refused to back down. But as difficult as the injuries have been, that wasn't the most crushing blow of the night. No, the true turning point came from the officiating crew, whose whistles ensured that Indiana's uphill climb became nearly impossible.
Here's Mitchell. I think that's a 2. Doesn't go. And now it's McBride getting Hull.
That one might be a problem.
Indiana just taking shots to the face.
What do you do when the referees stop protecting the game and start becoming part of the problem? That's exactly the nightmare Indiana was forced to confront. Lexie Hull, already stretched to her limits with extended minutes, dug in on defense against Kayla McBride. In the scramble, McBride's swing caught Hull flush with a brutal elbow to the face. She crumpled to the floor, clutching at her face in obvious pain. For anyone watching, the call seemed automatic. This was a textbook flagrant, the kind of contact that should never be overlooked. But instead of punishing McBride, the whistle went the other way. The player who took the elbow, the one who absorbed the hit, was somehow tagged as the offender. The ruling stunned everyone, players, fans, and commentators alike. Gasps rippled through the arena as disbelief gave way to outrage. It wasn't just a bad call. It was the kind of decision that shifts momentum, that makes you question whether the game is being decided by the athletes on the floor or the officials with the whistle.
And Hull is checking her jaw.
See that one again. Kayla McBride goes up, grabs the board, and she wants to get free because Hull has her kind of wrapped, and boy, that's a hard swing. They're going to review it.
Fans and analysts waited for the replay to bring clarity, expecting the review process to correct what was clearly a blown call. Instead, the slow-motion footage only deepened the frustration. The officials did acknowledge the contact, upgrading the foul slightly, but they still refused to place full responsibility on McBride. It was almost as if they were saying, yes, something happened, but we're not willing to call it what it truly was. The evidence couldn't have been clearer. Hull took direct contact to the face, dropped to the floor in visible pain, and yet somehow it was Indiana that came out on the losing end of the exchange. To players, coaches, and fans alike, it felt less like justice and more like a shrug from the officials. How do you defend a decision that punishes the victim while sparing the one who delivered the hit?
Boom! Right there. Oh my goodness. Boom! Right in the face, man. Right in the face. Now, like I stated, I get it. You might be mad that Lexie put her hand on your forehead. But fam, there is no reason for you to be throwing elbows to somebody's face like that. Come on, man. Throwing elbows to the face.
Across social media, the backlash was immediate and loud. Fever fans flooded timelines with frustration, asking the same pressing question. Was this just an isolated blunder, or is Indiana being officiated under a different standard altogether? Because the pattern is becoming harder to ignore. Time and time again, when a Fever player absorbs a hard hit, whether it's a shove in the paint, a body blow on a drive, or in this case, a vicious elbow, the whistle almost never favors them. That growing trend has sparked a perception that the league is turning a blind eye, allowing opponents to ramp up their physicality as long as it's Indiana taking the punishment. And with players already falling left and right to serious injuries, that perception hits even harder. Losing half your roster to medical setbacks is brutal enough. But when the officials appear to be adding to the mountain of obstacles, it feels less like competition and more like the deck is deliberately stacked against you. For a team fighting just to stay afloat, the last thing they should have to battle is the very people meant to enforce fairness.
Kayla McBride, 13 points for Kayla McBride. Hit Lexie Hull with an elbow. Foul on Lexie Hull. Hits Lexie Hull with an elbow, foul on Lexie Hull. I don't understand.
Minnesota leaned heavily on physicality from the opening tip, and to be fair, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Plenty of teams use toughness and contact to impose their will. The real problem came in how those same standards weren't applied evenly. When Indiana tried to match that intensity, the whistle stayed silent. Head coach Stephanie White carefully chose her words afterward, but even she hinted that the game was officiated on two very different scales, a polite way of saying her team wasn't being given the same treatment as their opponent. Anyone watching could spot the imbalance. Fever guards drove hard to the rim and absorbed contact with no call, while even the slightest bump on the other end sent Minnesota players to the line. Each missed whistle piled onto the frustration already boiling over from fans, coaches, and players. And the longer the game went on, the louder that frustration became, because inconsistency isn't just irritating, it changes outcomes.
This was intentional. Now, if it wasn't intentional, okay, give it a flagrant one. I understand it. She wasn't trying to do it. Cool. But this was intentional. All right? She had malice on the heart with this one. Bad intentions. Okay? She was trying to wreck some stuff up there doing this one. Hey, let's just keep it a grand, man. Let's just keep it a grand. Kayla McBride was trying to knock Lexie right on her booty cheeks, but she succeeded at, fam. Knocked her clean out. Look at this.
This moment wasn't just about a blown whistle. It carried a deeper meaning. For Indiana, it felt like proof of something larger, a sign that the system itself was tilted against them. The perception wasn't simply that mistakes were being made, but that an officiating bias had become another opponent they were forced to battle every single night. And yet, in the face of that injustice, the short-handed Fever refused to break. Instead of folding under the weight of frustration, they dug in even harder, scratching for every rebound, contesting every shot, and leaning on unlikely heroes to keep the game within reach. It became less about fairness and more about resilience, a team stripped down to its core, still finding a way to fight when everything around them seemed determined to push them down.
Knocked the clean out, man. Oh my goodness. I mean, folded. Look at how her legs are folded right here. Come on, man. Knocking a clean out right here. That was bad intentions, dog. That was bad intentions. I don't care what anybody say, man. That was bad intentions, man. And the refs have to do something about it. You have to make sure that players don't feel comfortable getting out of pocket and doing things like this.
Most teams, missing half their core players and buried under questionable officiating, would have folded before the game even reached halftime. But Indiana didn't break. Instead of surrendering to the circumstances, they pushed back with every ounce of energy they had left. Once again, it was Kelsey Mitchell who became the heartbeat of the offense. She poured in 26 points, repeatedly answering Minnesota's runs and keeping the Fever within striking distance until exhaustion finally caught up to her. Mitchell wasn't just scoring. She was the offensive lifeline, the one player consistently creating opportunities when no one else could. Without her shot-making and fearless drives, this matchup could have spiraled into a blowout early, but she refused to let it. Even when the whistles seemed tilted, Mitchell stayed aggressive, attacking the rim, pulling defenders with her, and setting the competitive tone her teammates rallied behind. In a game that could have easily slipped away, she kept the fight alive.
Indiana started this game 9 of 13, but has missed 4 straight until Shea Petty.
One of the night's biggest surprises came from Shea Petty, a player who had barely touched down in Indiana before being thrust into the fire. Normally, a hardship signing is expected to provide spot minutes, maybe offer a steady presence while the starters rest. But Petty flipped that script completely. Off the bench, she poured in 16 points as if she had been running with this squad all season long. What made her performance so remarkable wasn't just the scoring, it was the circumstances. She entered the game with no rhythm, no established chemistry, and no time to ease herself into the system. Yet when Indiana desperately needed an offensive spark, she stepped up and delivered. For someone signed as a short-term emergency option, Petty didn't just fill a gap. She looked like she belonged on that stage, proving that even stopgap players can become essential pieces when everything else is crumbling.
Reaction looked like it was a lot more violent than that. It still gotta hurt though. The pass from Williams. Oh, Collier is blocked.
On the defensive end, Aaliyah Boston became the steadying force Indiana desperately needed. Even while being doubled, shoved, and bodied in the paint, she refused to give Minnesota free control inside. Her presence on the boards was relentless, clawing down rebounds that extended possessions and stabilizing a defense stretched to its breaking point. Boston didn't need gaudy scoring numbers to prove her worth. Her composure and toughness acted as the anchor of a team being held together by patchwork substitutions. In a season defined by chaos, her steadiness meant everything. And it wasn't just Boston who stepped into the storm. Fans hadn't forgotten Lexie Hull's performance from the previous game, where she logged a career-high 37 minutes and dropped 23 points. That may not sound monumental compared to superstar stat lines, but context makes it huge. For a player who normally isn't leaned on for such volume, Hull's willingness to embrace a heavier role gave Indiana critical breathing room. Then there was Aerial Powers, another emergency addition forced into meaningful minutes following Sophie Cunningham's season-ending injury. She didn't have the benefit of months to build chemistry, yet she had to play as though she'd been part of the system all along. When you step back and look at the whole picture, you see a roster where every piece, whether veteran, newcomer, or hardship signing, was stretched far beyond its usual weight. And still, they kept pushing forward.
Dribble. Carrington got a piece of it. Powers gets it back. Second attempt. Up and in. And she's fouled.
The basket. And then she's just fighting and battling for her shot.
That's why fans can't help but let their minds wander. What happens when this team finally gets Caitlin Clark back on the floor? If a patchwork roster stitched together with hardship signings can push legitimate playoff contenders to the brink, then the thought of a healthy backcourt is nothing short of electrifying. The answer almost feels obvious. Indiana transforms from a team just trying to survive into one that can truly compete. For now, reality is harsher. The Fever have slipped to 8th in the standings, clinging to playoff position by the thinnest of margins. Every game has the weight of postseason basketball, every possession a test of endurance. And still, their spirit refuses to die. They fight, they scrap, and they push back no matter the odds. Yet deep down, everyone knows there's one name that changes the equation. One player whose presence alone could reshape the Fever's trajectory. All eyes, all hopes, all conversations inevitably turn to the same question. When will Caitlin Clark return? There's only one player who feels capable of pulling Indiana out of this storm, and fans finally caught a glimpse of her return. Caitlin Clark was spotted back on the practice floor in Minnesota, not cleared for game action just yet, but moving alongside her teammates again. That single moment shifted the entire atmosphere surrounding the Fever. For weeks, Clark had been nothing more than a voice from the bench, watching helplessly as her team battled without her. But the sight of her walking into shoot-around, lacing up, and joining drills with the group brought a surge of hope. It wasn't just about her shot or her playmaking. It was about what her presence symbolized. For a roster worn down by injuries, inconsistency, and exhaustion, seeing Clark back in uniform felt like oxygen. A lifeline in the middle of a season that has tested them in every possible way.
This team needs Caitlin Clark to come back in the worst way. Not only if they want to save this, if they want to even play in mid to late September. This isn't a playoff team, what we're watching right now. This isn't a playoff team. This is a Kelsey Mitchell, please save us team. Kelsey Mitchell, we need 40 and 10, 40 points, 10 assists from you every night to be in the playoffs. We need a Herculean effort in the second half. We need Lexie Hull catching fire late in the fourth quarter and in overtime for this team to continue to stay in the playoffs.
Her return can't come soon enough, because the Fever are barely hanging on to the 8th seed with a 19-18 record after the loss to Minnesota. That's a razor-thin margin, a single game separating them from the Sparks, who are breathing down their necks. And with only 7 games left on the schedule, the margin for error has completely evaporated. The road ahead doesn't get any kinder. Seattle, Golden State, Chicago, and Los Angeles are all looming matchups, each one a playoff-caliber test with no space to exhale. Every possession matters, every mistake carries weight, and every loss pushes Indiana closer to the edge of elimination. That's the reality right now, desperation. The Fever don't have the luxury of time or patience. They need wins, and they need them immediately.
We got our best indication yet that Caitlin Clark is on her way back toward a return for the Indiana Fever. That's because she was seen participating in shoot-around before the Minnesota Lynx game. Now, that doesn't mean she's playing. She's still out for that game, and she hasn't returned to full practice yet, but she is back on the court with her teammates. This coming on the heels of Stephanie White saying she hopes that Clark would return to the lineup before the regular season is out, and that when you see her participating in practice, you will know she's on the way back.
The Fever's struggles without Clark couldn't be clearer. There's no one orchestrating the offense, no natural floor general who bends defenses and opens lanes for teammates. Kelsey Mitchell can pour in points, Aaliyah Boston can anchor the paint, but neither fills that role of conductor. Without Clark, possessions feel disjointed. 5 players moving, but without a unifying thread. That's why the hardship signings, as admirable as they've been, can only carry Indiana so far. They've injected effort and energy, but they can't replicate the structure Clark provides. And fans know it. Every clip of her shooting in warm-ups becomes viral material. Every dribble in practice is slowed down, scrutinized, and dissected online. Her footwork, her speed, even the way she carries herself, all of it gets magnified into hope or worry. Because this isn't just about excitement. It's about fear. The playoff math is tightening by the day, and Indiana's slim lead over Los Angeles could vanish in a week. Without Clark, the Fever are surviving on grit alone. With her, the entire ceiling changes. That's why her return isn't just wanted. It feels essential.
You see Caitlin Clark, this video captured by Chloe Peterson at Shoot Around. You can see Caitlin doing some work right there, just, warm-up work, back and forth on the court, but nonetheless on a basketball court. It's been a long time since we've seen Caitlin Clark on a basketball court. Certainly a long time since we've seen Caitlin Clark play basketball. Then there was a little bit more footage here, and you see Caitlin involved on the floor yet again, even handling the ball, working with her teammates. I mean, that's an important sign there, to see her working with her teammates.
What Clark offers isn't just points. She reshapes the floor. She elevates Boston and Mitchell by creating cleaner looks, slowing the chaos, and making Indiana resemble a true playoff team again. No hardship signee, no patchwork lineup can replicate that. Her comeback isn't just another player returning. It's the difference between this group battling in the postseason or watching from home. The hope is rising. The fans are restless, and everyone knows what hangs in the balance. But can one player, even Caitlin Clark, really overcome everything working against this team? Because Indiana isn't just facing their opponents on the court. They're fighting injuries, constant roster turnover, and officiating that too often feels stacked against them. That combination doesn't just wear a team down physically. It tests their belief, their focus, their toughness. You can see it in their reactions after certain calls. You can hear it in the frustration boiling over from the fanbase online. So the question lingers, when Clark returns, will it be enough? Can she pull this team past all the roadblocks and drag them into the postseason? Whatever happens, one thing is already clear. The fight Indiana has shown through all this adversity will not be forgotten. If this resilience carries them into the playoffs, it'll be remembered as the moment the Fever turned a season of chaos into something unforgettable. But what do you think? Are the referees really out to get Indiana? Or is it just the breaks of the game? Let us know down in the comments. We want to hear from you. And as always, if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the Fever and the rest of the WNBA. We've got more deep dives and game breakdowns coming your way, so don't miss it. Click the video on your screen now for more, and we'll see you in the next one.